The flight attendant's hand trembled as she realized whose boarding pass she just tore. The woman in seat 1A wasn't just another passenger. She was Diana Mitchell, CEO of Skyrise Airlines, the very company whose uniform this attendant wore. The plane fell silent. Careers were about to end. Before we dive into this incredible story, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. If you believe standing up against injustice matters, smash that like button and subscribe to never miss stories that need to be told. Trust me, what happens next will leave you speechless. Now, let's see how one woman's refusal to back down changed an entire airline industry. Diana Mitchell adjusted her sunglasses as the taxi pulled up to Philadelphia International Airport's departure terminal. The dashboard clock read 5:17 a.m. She had been awake since 4:30, reviewing quarterly reports on her tablet during the 40-minute ride from her home in the suburbs. At 48 years old, Diana had learned that success demanded sacrifice, and sleep was often the first casualty. She stepped out into the crisp autumn air, pulling her carry-on behind her. Unlike the power suits and designer heels she typically wore to corporate headquarters, today she had chosen dark jeans, a simple navy blouse, and comfortable flats. Her natural hair was pulled back into a low bun. No makeup beyond lip gloss. No jewelry except the small gold studs her grandmother had given her decades ago. She looked like any other tired traveler heading to the West Coast, not the chief executive officer of a major airline. That was exactly the point. Diana had purchased her first-class ticket to Los Angeles under her personal name, not through the corporate travel account. She had specifically requested seat 1A, the window seat in the front row. Her assistant knew she was traveling, but only 3 members of her executive team knew why. This was an undercover audit, a chance to experience her airline the way millions of customers did every single day. She wheeled her bag through the automatic doors and paused, her trained eyes scanning the terminal. 23 years in the aviation industry had taught her to notice everything. The ticket counter queues moved smoothly. Good. The digital departure boards updated without flickering. Excellent. A janitor efficiently cleaned a spill near gate B7. She made a mental note to commend the facilities manager. Her phone buzzed. A text from her assistant, Kenneth Park, LA meetings confirmed for 2 p.m. Merger partners eager to discuss terms. Board wants your recommendation by Friday. Diana typed back quickly, "We'll be ready." Focus on the diversity metrics in their leadership team. That's non-negotiable. She had built Skyrise Airlines from a struggling regional carrier into a national competitor through relentless innovation and a commitment to excellence. Starting as a gate agent 23 years ago, she had worked every position imaginable. Baggage handler during summer breaks from community college. Customer service representative while earning her bachelor's degree at night. Operations supervisor while completing her MBA. Each role had taught her something vital about the business of moving people across the sky. But lately, something had been gnawing at her. During the last board meeting, several members had raised concerns about customer complaints regarding staff behavior. The language had been carefully vague, but Diana knew corporate doublespeak when she heard it. She had demanded specifics. What kind of behavior? Which routes? What patterns existed? The answers had troubled her deeply. Anonymous reports had surfaced about flight attendants treating certain passengers differently based on race. Black customers questioned about ticket authenticity. Latino families asked for additional identification. Asian passengers subjected to random extra screenings. The complaints weren't widespread enough to trigger formal investigations, but they were too consistent to ignore. Diana had fought too hard and too long to let her airline become a place where anyone felt unwelcome. Her grandmother had cleaned airplane cabins in the 1960s, scrubbing toilets and emptying trash while white passengers looked through her as if she were invisible. Diana had promised herself that if she ever had power in this industry, she would use it to ensure dignity for everyone. So here she was, conducting her own investigation. She moved through security efficiently. The TSA agent barely glanced at her driver's license before waving her through. She collected her bag, slipped her shoes back on, and headed toward the coffee kiosk. She ordered a large black coffee and a blueberry muffin, paying with cash and leaving a $5 tip for the barista, who looked shocked by the generosity. Gate A12 was already busy with early morning travelers. Diana found a seat near the windows and pretended to read news on her tablet while actually observing the gate agents. They were professional, courteous, handling the usual chaos of oversold flights and seat changes with practiced efficiency. Nothing unusual. Nothing concerning. The boarding announcement crackled over the intercom at 6:45 a.m. "We'd like to begin pre-boarding for passengers requiring extra assistance, followed by our first-class cabin." Diana stood, smoothed her blouse, and joined the small line of premium passengers. The gate agent scanned her boarding pass without comment, and she walked down the jetway toward the aircraft. The morning sun streamed through the windows, painting everything in shades of gold. She stepped onto the plane and immediately noticed the lead flight attendant stationed near the galley. The woman's name tag read Jennifer Hartley. Mid-30s, blonde hair pulled into a regulation bun, makeup perfectly applied. She was smiling warmly at the passenger ahead of Diana, an older white gentleman in an expensive suit. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Patterson. So wonderful to see you again. Your usual seat, 2B. Can I bring you a champagne?" Diana filed the observation away. Recognizing frequent flyers was good customer service. She moved forward, located seat 1A, and settled in by the window. She placed her bag in the overhead compartment and sat down, pulling out her tablet. To anyone watching, she appeared to be reading a novel. In reality, she was reviewing customer satisfaction scores from the Philadelphia hub, disguised under an innocuous file name. From her peripheral vision, she watched Jennifer move through the cabin. The flight attendant greeted each boarding passenger, but Diana noticed a subtle pattern. White passengers received warm hellos and first-name greetings. A well-dressed black couple in seats 2C and 2D received a brief nod. An Asian businessman in 3A got a tight smile that never reached Jennifer's eyes. When Jennifer finally approached Diana's row, her expression shifted into something Diana recognized instantly. It was the look of someone trying to mask suspicion behind professionalism. Diana had seen it 1,000 times in her life. "Excuse me, can I see your boarding pass?" Diana looked up, keeping her face neutral. "Is there a problem?" "Just verifying seat assignments." Jennifer's tone was clipped. Diana handed over her boarding pass. She noticed that Jennifer had not asked to see anyone else's documentation. The flight attendant examined it with exaggerated thoroughness, checking the seat number against the overhead bin markers not once, not twice, but 3 separate times. Jennifer's lips pursed. "This seems correct, but..." She let the sentence hang in the air, heavy with implication. "But what?" Diana asked calmly. Jennifer seemed to realize she had no valid reason to question further. "Nothing. Enjoy your flight." As she walked away, Diana heard her whisper to a younger flight attendant, a Latina woman whose name tag read, Maria Rodriguez, "Keep an eye on 1A." Maria glanced at Diana, and for just a moment, their eyes met. Diana saw discomfort there, maybe even sympathy, before Maria quickly looked away. The cabin continued filling with passengers. Diana observed everything, her mind cataloging details for the report she would write later. At 6:58 a.m., just 2 minutes before scheduled departure, a commotion erupted at the aircraft door. A couple had arrived, both red-faced and agitated. The woman wore a cream-colored Chanel suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Diamonds glittered at her throat and wrists. Her husband, silver-haired and radiating entitlement, carried a leather briefcase that screamed executive power. "This is absolutely unacceptable," the woman announced loudly. "We're Platinum Elite members. Jennifer rushed toward them like they were visiting royalty. "Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood. I'm so sorry. What seems to be the problem?" Robert Blackwood's voice carried throughout the first-class cabin. "We were supposed to have seats together in first class. Your incompetent gate agents put us in 3C and 3D. Middle seats. In economy." His wife, Catherine, placed a manicured hand on her chest as if the very thought might induce cardiac arrest. "We've flown over 200,000 miles with this airline. This is how you treat your most loyal customers." Diana watched Jennifer's transformation. The cold professionalism she had shown earlier melted into obsequious concern. "Oh my goodness, that's terrible. Let me see what I can do. I'm sure we can find a solution." Jennifer hurried to the galley, grabbed the passenger manifest, and began studying it intently. Her finger traced down the list, stopping at certain rows. Diana knew exactly what she was doing. Checking for passengers who might be convinced to give up their premium seats. The other first-class passengers had gone quiet, watching the drama unfold. An elderly white couple in seats 4A and 4B exchanged knowing glances. A businessman in 5C buried his nose in his newspaper, clearly wanting no part of whatever was coming. Jennifer returned to the Blackwoods with a smile that promised resolution. "Let me speak with one of our passengers. I'm confident we can accommodate you." She turned and walked directly toward Diana. Diana had known this was coming from the moment Jennifer started scanning the manifest. She set down her tablet and looked up, meeting the flight attendant's eyes with calm directness. "Ma'am, we have a situation that requires your cooperation." Jennifer's tone attempted warmth but couldn't quite hide the underlying steel. "What kind of situation?" Diana asked. "The passengers who just boarded are very important frequent flyers with our airline. They've experienced a terrible booking error through no fault of their own." Jennifer paused, as if expecting Diana to volunteer immediately. When she didn't, Jennifer continued. "They deserve to be in first class, and I'm hoping you'll be willing to help us make this right." "How would I help make it right?" Diana knew the answer, but she wanted to hear Jennifer say it out loud. "By voluntarily moving to seat 3C. It's a perfectly comfortable seat, and we'd be happy to provide you with a travel voucher as compensation for your flexibility." The cabin had gone completely silent. Every passenger was now watching, some subtly, others openly staring. Diana spoke clearly. "I paid full fare for seat 1A. Why should I give it up?" Jennifer's smile tightened. "As I explained, these passengers are Platinum Elite members. They contribute significantly to our airline success. And I don't." Diana kept her voice level, but she felt anger burning in her chest. "That's not what I'm saying." Jennifer's professional mask was beginning to slip. "I'm simply asking you to be gracious. Surely you understand that some passengers have earned certain privileges." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Diana understood perfectly. She understood that Jennifer looked at her and saw someone who didn't belong in first class. Someone who should be grateful for whatever scraps of dignity she was allowed. Someone who should step aside when her betters required accommodation. "I'm not moving," Diana said quietly. Jennifer's eyes flashed. "Ma'am, I'm trying to resolve this situation professionally. I would think you'd want to help rather than be difficult." "Difficult?" Diana raised an eyebrow. "I'm sitting in a seat I purchased. That's not difficult. That's normal passenger behavior." "Look," Jennifer's voice lowered, taking on a conspiratorial tone that made Diana's skin crawl. "Between you and me, this really would be easier if you just cooperated. These folks are the kind of customers we prioritize. I'm offering you a voucher. That's more than fair." Diana leaned forward slightly. "I'd like to speak with the captain, please." Jennifer actually laughed, a sharp sound without humor. "The captain is busy with pre-flight checks. He doesn't have time to mediate seating disputes caused by uncooperative passengers. Before Diana could respond, Robert Blackwood himself stood up from his economy seat and walked forward. He was tall, easily 6'3", and he used every inch of that height as he loomed over Diana's seat. "Sweetheart," his voice dripped with condescension, "just make this easy on everyone, okay? My wife and I have had a very long week. We deserve to relax in comfort. You can understand that, can't you?" Diana looked up at him, refusing to be intimidated. "I've had a long week too, sir. Which is why I paid for this seat." Catherine Blackwood appeared beside her husband, her expression a mixture of impatience and poorly concealed disdain. "Robert, honestly, some people just don't understand how things work. They think a ticket entitles them to anything." The casual cruelty of that statement took Diana's breath away for a moment. She had heard variations of it her entire life. From teachers who questioned how she could afford college. From colleagues who assumed she was a diversity hire. From store clerks who followed her through boutiques as if her very presence was suspicious. "I understand exactly how things work," Diana said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I bought a first-class ticket. I'm sitting in my assigned first-class seat. That's how it works." Jennifer stepped closer, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Ma'am, if you continue being disruptive, I'll have no choice but to call security. I don't think you want that kind of embarrassment." Diana pulled out her phone and opened the Notes app. "What are you doing?" Jennifer demanded. Documenting this interaction, Diana replied calmly. "I assume that's permitted?" "Actually, no. Company policy prohibits filming or recording crew members without permission." Diana didn't look up from her phone. Company policy number 47-12 subsection C specifically states that passengers may document their own experiences for personal records, provided they don't interfere with crew duties or safety procedures. Audio and video recordings of crew require permission. Written notes and photographs do not. Would you like me to quote the entire policy? Jennifer's mouth opened and closed. She clearly hadn't expected Diana to know the specific regulations. Most passengers didn't. "I'll be calling security," Jennifer said tightly. She pulled out the aircraft phone and spoke quietly into it, but Diana heard enough. "Gate A12, need security on board. Uncooperative passenger refusing crew instructions." Maria, the younger flight attendant, appeared beside Jennifer. "Maybe we should just stay out of this," Jennifer snapped. "Go check the aft cabin." Maria retreated, but Diana caught the look of distress on her face. Diana continued typing notes on her phone. Time, seat number, exact quotes where she could remember them. She had learned long ago that documentation was power. Without evidence, complaints became he said she said situations where authority figures always won. "Stop that right now," Jennifer ordered. "I'm warning you." "Warning me about what, exactly?" Diana looked up, meeting her eyes. "What specific airline policy am I violating by sitting in my purchased seat and taking notes?" Jennifer opened her mouth but no words came out. Because the truth was, Diana wasn't violating any policy. She was simply refusing to accept unequal treatment, and that refusal had exposed the rotten foundation Jennifer's request stood on. Heavy footsteps sounded on the jetway. Security was coming. 2 airport security officers boarded the aircraft, their presence immediately changing the atmosphere in the cabin. The first was a white man in his 40s, thick-necked and serious-faced, with a radio clipped to his belt and a hand resting casually near it. His name tag identified him as Officer Steve Morrison. The second officer hung back slightly, a black man who appeared younger, maybe early 30s, with watchful eyes that took in the entire scene before focusing on anyone specifically. His badge read Officer Thomas Williams. Jennifer immediately launched into her narrative, her voice taking on a tone of practiced distress. "Officers, thank you for coming so quickly. We have an uncooperative passenger in seat 1A who is refusing to follow crew instructions and causing a delay to our departure. Steve stepped forward, his expression already hardening into official sternness. Ma'am, I need to see your identification and boarding pass. Diana reached into her purse, moving slowly and deliberately. She had learned that lesson too. Quick movements by black people made nervous white men reach for weapons. She handed over her driver's license and boarding pass without comment. Steve examined both documents thoroughly, comparing the photo on the license to Diana's face several times. Behind him, Thomas moved closer, positioning himself where he could observe everything. These appear to be in order, Steve said finally. But the flight attendant says you're refusing instructions. Is that correct? That's not accurate, Diana replied. I haven't refused any lawful instructions. I've simply declined to voluntarily give up the seat I paid for. Jennifer interrupted. That's not true. She initially agreed to switch seats and then changed her mind, causing this whole disruption. Now she's being belligerent and filming the crew. Diana's eyebrows rose. I never agreed to anything. That's a lie. And I'm not filming. I'm taking written notes, which is completely within policy. Catherine Blackwood suddenly chimed in from her economy seat. Officer, she's being completely unreasonable. She used very aggressive language and made everyone uncomfortable. Diana felt a chill run down her spine. Now they were inventing things entirely. She had raised her voice exactly 0 times. She had threatened no one. But she knew how this game worked. Multiple white witnesses claiming aggression from a black woman. It was a story police had heard and believed 1,000,000 times. Several other passengers nodded along, though Diana noted they were all white and all seated in economy, desperate for any chance at an upgrade themselves. An elderly white woman in seat 6A spoke up hesitantly. I've been sitting right here the whole time. I didn't hear her say anything aggressive. Jennifer shot the woman a look so withering that she immediately went quiet, shrinking back into her seat. Thomas Williams stepped forward for the first time. Ma'am, he addressed Jennifer, can you explain exactly what instruction this passenger refused and what specific policy she violated? Jennifer fumbled, clearly not expecting to be questioned. She refused to move when asked to accommodate our platinum members. Is there a regulation requiring passengers to give up their assigned seats to accommodate others? Thomas asked, his tone neutral but pointed. Well, no, but... Jennifer glanced around as if looking for support. It's about customer service and flexibility. So she didn't actually violate any rules, Thomas clarified. She's being disruptive. Jennifer's voice rose. Look at all this chaos she's causing. Steve cut in, clearly wanting to resolve the situation quickly. Ma'am, he addressed Diana, it seems like this would all be easier if you just cooperated. Why not take the other seat and avoid further problems? What problems? Diana asked calmly. I'm not causing problems. I'm sitting in my seat. But you're delaying the flight, Steve insisted. I'm delaying nothing. I boarded on time and sat down. Everything that's happened since then has been initiated by the flight attendant, not by me. Robert Blackwood stood up again, his face reddening. This is ridiculous. We have rights as elite members. This woman is stealing our seats. I can't steal what's already mine, Diana said quietly. My boarding pass clearly states seat 1A. You know what I mean. Robert's voice carried an edge of fury now. People like us shouldn't have to deal with this nonsense. The phrase hung in the air. People like us. Diana had heard it before, knew exactly what it meant. People with money. People with status. People who were white and assumed the world owed them deference. Ma'am, I need you to decide right now, Steve said to Diana. Either take the other seat and we all move on, or I'm going to have to ask you to deplane. On what grounds? Diana's voice remained level. I'd like you to explain specifically what regulation I'm violating that would justify my removal from this flight. Steve's jaw tightened. He clearly wasn't used to being questioned. You're being disruptive. By sitting quietly in my assigned seat. That's your definition of disruptive? Thomas spoke again, addressing Steve quietly. She's right. Technically, she hasn't violated any regulations. If we remove her without cause, it opens the airline and the airport to liability. She's causing a scene. Jennifer protested. The scene started when you asked her to move, Thomas pointed out. Jennifer's face flushed red. I can't believe this. Everything is discrimination with you people. Always playing the victim. The cabin went completely silent. Every passenger stared. Some in shock. Some in secondhand embarrassment. A few with expressions that suggested they'd been thinking the same thing but knew better than to say it out loud. Thomas Williams's entire demeanor changed. His eyes hardened. His shoulders squared. He had heard what every black person in America learns to recognize immediately. The mask slipping. The quiet part said loud. Diana reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. She handed it to Thomas without a word. He looked at it. His eyes widened. He showed it to Steve, whose face went pale. The card was simple, elegant, printed on expensive stock. It read, Diana Mitchell, Chief Executive Officer, Skyrise Airlines. Jennifer was still ranting, oblivious. I've been doing this job for 12 years. I know how to handle difficult passengers. This is exactly why we need better screening. If people can't afford first class, they shouldn't. Ma'am. Thomas's voice cut through her tirade like a knife. Do you know who this passenger is? Jennifer barely paused. I don't care if she's the President of the United States. She needs to follow the rules and show respect for. Steve thrust the business card in front of Jennifer's face. Read it. Jennifer's eyes focused on the card. Diana watched the exact moment comprehension hit. The color drained from the flight attendant's face. Her mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. No sound came out. You were saying, Miss Hartley. Diana's voice was soft, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. Jennifer's hand started shaking. The business card trembled between her fingers as if it were burning her skin. Ms. Mitchell, I didn't. I mean, I was just trying to. Diana held up one hand, stopping the flood of stammered excuses. Continue with your standard procedures, Ms. Hartley. Don't let my presence change how you do your job. Please, show me exactly how Skyrise Airlines treats its passengers. But what should happen when the people meant to protect us become the ones we need protection from? If you believe no one should ever have to prove they belong, comment number 1 right now. Hit that like button if you think this flight attendant was completely out of line, and make sure you're subscribed because what happens next is the kind of justice we all need to see. Now, here's where things really get interesting. Will Jennifer face real consequences, or will this be swept under the rug like so many complaints before it? Let's find out. The words landed like physical blows. Jennifer stumbled backward, bumping into the galley counter. Maria, the junior flight attendant, appeared from the rear cabin, clearly sensing something major had shifted. Robert Blackwood demanded, "What's going on? Who is this woman?" Thomas turned to him, holding up the business card so Robert could read it. The transformation on Robert's face would have been comical under different circumstances. His expression of entitled indignation melted into pure shock, then rapidly shifted toward panic. "Oh my God," Catherine Blackwood whispered, grabbing her husband's arm. "Robert, that's... I know who it is." Robert hissed back. Several passengers had pulled out their phones. Diana could see the little red recording lights. This was going viral. Within hours, this moment would be playing on screens across the country. By tomorrow, it would be international news. Jennifer tried again. "Ms. Mitchell, please, if we could just discuss this privately." "You wanted a public resolution," Diana said calmly. "You involved security officers, made accusations in front of dozens of witnesses, and created this spectacle. We'll resolve it the same way." She turned to Thomas. "Officer Williams, I'd like you to document everything that happened here. Every word spoken, every action taken. I'll need a full incident report." "Yes, ma'am," Thomas replied, already pulling out his notepad. "I'll make sure it's thorough." Diana looked at Jennifer. "Ms. Hartley, would you please recite for everyone here the company policy regarding voluntary seat reassignments?" Jennifer's voice came out barely above a whisper. "Passengers may be asked if they're willing to change seats, but they cannot be required to do so unless there's a safety concern or operational necessity." "And was there a safety concern with my seating?" "No, ma'am." "An operational necessity?" "No, ma'am." "So you asked me to give up my seat purely to accommodate other passengers' preferences?" Jennifer nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "Did you ask any other passenger in this cabin to give up their seat?" "No, ma'am." "Why just me, Miss Hartley? What made me different from everyone else in first class?" The question hung in the air. Everyone knew the answer. But Diana needed to hear Jennifer say it, or at least hear her inability to say it. Jennifer's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Tears spilled down her cheeks, taking mascara with them. Into the silence, Maria's voice rang out, trembling but clear. "She does this all the time." Every head turned toward the young flight attendant. "Maria, don't you dare." Jennifer started. "No," Maria said, her voice growing stronger. "I'm tired of staying quiet. Last month, you made an elderly black gentleman move from first class because a white couple wanted to sit together. He had paid full fare. They were on upgrades. But you made him move." Diana's eyes never left Maria's face. "Go on." 2 weeks ago, a black woman boarded with a Louis Vuitton bag. An authentic one. Jennifer here questioned whether it was real, right in front of other passengers. Made the poor woman so uncomfortable she almost cried. "That's enough." Jennifer shrieked. "It's not enough," Maria shot back. "Do you know how many times I've watched you treat passengers differently based on their skin color? How many times you've asked me to keep an eye on black families, Latino passengers, anyone who didn't look like your idea of first class?" Diana stood up. She was only 5'6", but in that moment, she commanded the entire space. "Officer Williams, please add Ms. Rodriguez's testimony to your report." Thomas nodded, writing rapidly. Diana turned to address the entire cabin. Passengers in economy had craned their necks to see what was happening. Some had walked forward, drawn by the commotion. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this delay. We'll be departing shortly. I want you to know that this incident will be investigated thoroughly. What happened here today is not acceptable, not in my airline, not anywhere." She looked at Jennifer. "Ms. Hartley, you're being placed on immediate suspension pending a full investigation. Officer Williams, please escort her off the aircraft." "You can't do this." Jennifer sobbed. "I have bills. I have a mortgage. This job is all I have." "You should have thought about that before you made it your mission to humiliate paying customers," Diana replied. Her voice wasn't cruel, just factual. "Your treatment of passengers didn't start today. It won't end with me. But it ends right now on this plane." Thomas gently took Jennifer's elbow. "Ma'am, let's go." As Jennifer was led down the aisle, she looked back at Diana one more time. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Diana didn't respond. Some apologies were too late, too hollow, too soaked in tears of self-pity rather than genuine remorse. Steve Morrison cleared his throat awkwardly. "Ma'am, I apologize if I contributed to." "You assumed," Diana interrupted. "You heard uncooperative passenger and aggressive, and you made assumptions about who was in the wrong. That's part of the problem too. We'll be addressing it." Steve nodded, his face burning red, and followed Thomas off the plane. Diana turned to Maria. "How long have you been working for Skyrise?" 3 years, ma'am." "Have you always wanted to speak up about these issues?" Maria nodded. "But I was scared. I'm supporting my family. My mom is sick. I couldn't risk my job." "You just risked it by telling the truth," Diana pointed out gently. "That took courage. Real courage." She looked at the passengers. "We need a new lead flight attendant for this flight. Maria, are you willing?" Maria's eyes went wide. "Me? But I'm just." "You're just honest and brave and willing to do the right thing even when it's hard. That's exactly who should be leading this crew. Are you willing?" "Yes, ma'am." Maria's face transformed with a smile. "Good. We'll also need to call in a backup crew member to replace Miss Hartley." Diana pulled out her phone and made a quick call to operations. Within 5 minutes, another flight attendant was on her way from the break room. Diana sat back down in seat 1A. She looked at Robert and Catherine Blackwood, still frozen in their economy seats. "Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood, I believe you have assigned seats in 3C and 3D. I suggest you take them so we can depart on time." They scrambled to comply, not making eye contact with anyone. The cabin slowly returned to normal. Passengers settled in. The replacement flight attendant arrived, was briefed quickly by Maria, and they prepared for departure. At 7:23 a.m., 43 minutes behind schedule, the aircraft door closed. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Captain James Crawford speaking. I apologize for our delayed departure. We had an operational situation that has now been resolved. We'll be pushing back shortly and should still arrive in Los Angeles close to our scheduled time thanks to favorable winds. Flight attendants, prepare for departure." As the plane pushed back from the gate, Diana looked out the window at the terminal receding behind them. She thought about her grandmother, who had cleaned these very planes 6 decades ago. Who had been invisible to passengers. Who had swallowed 1,000 small indignities because speaking up meant losing the job that fed her children. Diana had promised herself she would never be invisible. Never swallow indignity. Never allow others to make her smaller so they could feel bigger. Today, she had kept that promise. The aircraft climbed through the morning sky, Philadelphia disappearing beneath a carpet of clouds. Diana opened her tablet and pulled up the company's incident reporting system. She began typing a detailed account while everything was fresh in her mind. Time stamps. Direct quotes. Names of everyone involved. She documented Jennifer's initial suspicion, the escalating confrontation, the lies told to security. She noted Thomas Williams's professionalism and Steve Morrison's assumptions. She recorded Maria's bravery and the Blackwoods' entitled behavior. This wouldn't be buried in some middle manager's desk drawer. This was going directly to the board of directors. Maria appeared beside her seat, her hands still trembling slightly from adrenaline. "Ms. Mitchell, can I get you anything? Please, call me Diana when we're not in front of passengers. And yes, I'd love some coffee. Black, no sugar. Right away." Maria paused. "Ma'am, I mean Diana, I just want to say thank you. I've been wanting to report Jennifer for so long, but every time I tried, her supervisor would dismiss it. He'd say I was being too sensitive or misunderstanding her intentions." Diana's jaw tightened. Her supervisor's name? Patrick Reynolds. He's the regional manager for the Northeast hub. Diana made a note. Patrick Reynolds would be getting a call very soon. Possibly followed by a termination letter. Maria, after this flight, I want you to write down everything you've witnessed. Every incident, every passenger who was mistreated, every time you were told to ignore discriminatory behavior. Send it directly to my office. Won't that get me in trouble? With me? Never. With Patrick Reynolds? Diana smiled grimly. He won't be in a position to trouble anyone much longer. The flight leveled off at 35,000 feet. The seatbelt sign chimed off. Passengers began moving around the cabin, stretching legs, retrieving laptops. An elderly white woman from seat 6A approached Diana's row. She had short silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Excuse me, may I speak with you for a moment?" "Of course," Diana said. The woman sat in the empty aisle seat. "I'm Margaret Saunders. I wanted to apologize for not speaking up more forcefully. When that other passenger said you hadn't been aggressive, I should have been louder. I should have insisted. But I got scared when that flight attendant looked at me." Diana reached over and patted Margaret's hand. "You spoke up. That matters more than you know. Most people stay completely silent." "I've been thinking a lot lately about silence," Margaret said. "I'm 72 years old. I grew up in a time when people like me were taught not to make waves, not to get involved. But I've watched the news. I've seen what's happening in this country. And I realize that my comfort, my desire to avoid confrontation, that's part of the problem." "That's a hard realization to come to," Diana acknowledged. "It is. But necessary." Margaret leaned closer. "I travel a lot. My husband and I are retired, and we fly somewhere new every month. I've seen so many moments like this. Little cruelties, small injustices. And I've stayed quiet because they weren't happening to me. I'm ashamed of that. What matters is what you do now," Diana said gently. "Awareness is the first step. Action is the second." "I want to do better," Margaret said firmly. "If you ever need a witness statement, someone to corroborate what happened, you have my contact information." She pressed a business card into Diana's hand. "Please use it." After Margaret returned to her seat, others approached. A young black businessman in his 20s, impeccably dressed, leaned down to whisper. "Thank you for not moving. I've been flying for work for 3 years. Last month, I got asked to switch out of first class so a white family could sit together. I did it because I didn't want to cause a scene. I regretted it the whole flight." Diana looked him in the eye. "Never again. You paid for that seat. You belong there. Don't let anyone tell you different." He nodded, eyes bright with emotion. A Latina mother traveling with 2 young daughters stopped by. "My girls saw everything. Tonight, I'm going to tell them about standing up for yourself. About knowing your worth. Thank you for giving me a real-life example to share with them." One by one, passengers came. Some to apologize. Some to thank her. Some just to be seen by someone who understood. But Diana also noticed who didn't approach. Robert and Catherine Blackwood remained rigidly in their seats, staring straight ahead. A couple in first class who had nodded along with Jennifer's initial requests avoided eye contact. They knew they had been complicit in something ugly, and they couldn't face it. Around 10 a.m., a young girl appeared beside Diana's seat. She looked about 12, with braided hair and bright, curious eyes. Her grandmother stood behind her protectively. "Are you really the boss of this whole airplane company?" the girl asked. Diana smiled. "I am. My name is Diana. What's yours?" "Jasmine. Jasmine Thompson." "It's wonderful to meet you, Jasmine. How did you become the boss?" "I started at the very bottom, working jobs nobody else wanted. I went to school at night. I worked harder than I thought I could. And I never, ever let anyone tell me I didn't belong somewhere. Jasmine's eyes were wide. I want to be a pilot. My teacher says it's too hard for girls. Diana felt anger flash through her, but she kept her voice calm and encouraging. Your teacher is wrong. Do you know what percentage of commercial pilots in America are women? Jasmine shook her head. About 7%. Do you know what percentage are black women? Another head shake. Less than 1%. Do you know what that means? That it's really, really hard. It means you get to be a pioneer. You get to open doors. And it means that when you succeed, you'll inspire hundreds of other girls who look like you to follow. Diana pulled out another business card, wrote her personal email on the back. Give this to your grandmother. Skyrise has a scholarship program for young people interested in aviation. I want you to apply. And I want you to email me personally when you do. Jasmine took the card like it was made of gold. Really? Really? I started as a gate agent. You can start as a pilot. Deal? Deal. Jasmine practically skipped back to her seat, clutching the card. Her grandmother mouthed, "Thank you," to Diana, tears streaming down her face. Diana turned back to her tablet, but she couldn't focus on the reports anymore. She was thinking about the system she had built, the company she had shaped. She had fought so hard to create an airline known for excellence, for innovation, for customer service. But excellence meant nothing if it didn't include equity. Innovation was hollow if it didn't lift everyone. Customer service was a lie if it only served customers who looked a certain way. This flight had revealed a cancer in her company. The question was how deep it went. Was Jennifer an aberration, or was she a symptom? Was Patrick Reynolds protecting her, or was he part of a broader culture of tolerance for intolerance? Diana pulled up Skyrise's discrimination complaint database. She had access to everything as CEO. She began searching for patterns. Complaints about Jennifer Hartley, 7 in the past 18 months. Complaints about other flight attendants on Northeast routes, 43. Complaints about discriminatory treatment company-wide, over 200. Most had been marked, resolved, with notes like, additional training provided, or, employee counseled. But the same names kept appearing. The same behaviors kept being reported. Nothing had changed because no one with real power had been paying attention. That ended today. Diana began composing emails. To her VP of Human Resources. To her General Counsel. To every member of her executive team. The subject line read: Emergency meeting. Conference room. 5 p.m. today. Mandatory attendance. She wasn't going to let this moment pass. She wasn't going to accept platitudes and promises of improvement. She was going to burn the rot out of her company, even if it meant burning some careers along with it. The plane began its descent into Los Angeles. Captain James Crawford's voice came over the intercom as the plane descended through 20,000 feet. Flight attendants, please prepare the cabin for landing. Maria moved through the aisles with quiet confidence, checking seatbelts and securing loose items. The replacement attendant, a veteran crew member named Patricia Chen, worked the aft cabin with practiced efficiency. The flight had gone smoothly after Jennifer's removal. No drama. No incidents. Just professional service delivered with respect. Diana gathered her belongings, but her mind was already 3 steps ahead. She knew Kenneth Park, her VP of Operations, would be waiting at the gate. She had texted him mid-flight with a brief summary. His response had been immediate: crisis team assembled. Media strategy ready. Awaiting your direction. The plane touched down at LAX at 11:47 a.m. Pacific Time, only 22 minutes behind schedule despite the delayed departure. Captain Crawford made a smooth landing, and passengers applauded. It was a small thing, but Diana noted it. People were grateful for normalcy after the morning's chaos. As the plane taxied to the gate, Diana stood and addressed the cabin one final time. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention please?" Conversation stopped. Every face turned toward her. "I want to thank you for your patience today. What happened during boarding was unacceptable. It violated every value that Skyrise Airline stands for. I promise you that it will be addressed thoroughly and transparently." She paused, making eye contact with passengers throughout the cabin. "I also want to announce some immediate changes. Effective today, Skyrise Airlines will implement mandatory anti-bias training for every single employee who interacts with passengers. We will establish a direct reporting system for discrimination complaints that bypasses supervisors and goes straight to an independent oversight committee. We will enforce a zero-tolerance policy for discriminatory behavior. No exceptions. No excuses." Several passengers began to applaud. Others joined in. Soon the entire cabin was clapping. More importantly, Diana continued, "We will create accountability. Because policies mean nothing without enforcement. Training means nothing without consequences. And promises mean nothing without action." The applause grew louder. "Thank you for flying Skyrise. And thank you for witnessing what happened today. Your willingness to see, to remember, to care, that matters more than you know." She sat down as passengers continued clapping. Across the aisle, Margaret Saunders was crying openly. Jasmine was standing on her seat, clapping as hard as her small hands could manage. The plane pulled into gate 42. The seatbelt sign chimed off. Diana exited first, stepping into the jetway where Kenneth Park waited. He was a second-generation Korean-American, brilliant, driven, and one of the few executives Diana trusted completely. He had risen through operations, understood every aspect of the airline's functioning, and shared her commitment to excellence. "How bad?" he asked immediately. "Bad enough that we're burning it all down and rebuilding," Diana replied. "Is the team assembled?" Conference Room 3. "I've got legal, HR, communications, and our entire executive leadership. I also took the liberty of calling in Dr. Simone Washington." Diana raised an eyebrow. Dr. Washington was a renowned civil rights attorney and consultant who specialized in corporate discrimination cases. "Good thinking. We need outside expertise on this." They walked quickly through the terminal. Kenneth briefed her as they moved. "Security footage from the plane has been pulled. We have audio recordings from the aircraft systems. Passenger statements are being collected." Thomas Williams, the security officer, has already filed his incident report. It's thorough and damning. Jennifer Hartley, escorted off airport property. Her union rep is already making noise about wrongful termination. Let them make noise. We have documentation going back 18 months. 7 complaints, all substantiated, all buried by her supervisor. Patrick Reynolds, suspended as of 30 minutes ago. I pulled his email records. Diana, he actively discouraged employees from filing discrimination complaints. Told them it would hurt their careers, damage the company's reputation, create problems where none existed. Diana's hands clenched into fists. Get me everything on Reynolds. Every email, every text, every complaint he dismissed. I want a case so airtight that his lawyers won't even try to fight the termination. They reached the executive offices. The conference room was packed. Every seat taken, some people standing along the walls. Laptops open, phones charging, legal pads covered in notes. The energy in the room was electric with tension. Diana walked to the head of the table and remained standing. 3 hours ago, I was asked to give up my first-class seat to accommodate white passengers who felt entitled to it. The flight attendant who made this request has a documented history of discriminatory behavior. Her supervisor actively protected her. This is not an isolated incident. This is a system failure. She pulled up a presentation on the screen. Data. Statistics. Patterns of complaints by route, by crew, by hub. We have over 200 discrimination complaints filed in the last 2 years. Most were dismissed with minimal investigation. The same names appear repeatedly. The same behaviors are reported over and over. We have failed our passengers. We have failed our employees who tried to report problems. We have failed the values we claim to uphold. Dr. Simone Washington spoke up. She was in her early 50s, with natural hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. Ms. Mitchell, I've reviewed the preliminary data Kenneth sent me. This goes beyond individual bad actors. You have a culture problem. The question is whether you're willing to do what's necessary to fix it. I'm willing to do whatever it takes, Diana said firmly. Tell me what that looks like. Complete audit of HR practices. Independent investigation of all discrimination complaints. Mandatory training isn't enough. You need to restructure incentives, change promotion criteria, diversify leadership at every level. You need to make it more costly to discriminate than to treat people fairly. Gregory Stone, a board member who had attended via video conference, cleared his throat. He was 71, wealthy from family money, and had been on Skyrise board since the beginning. Ms. Mitchell, with all due respect, aren't we overreacting to one employee's poor judgment? Surely sensitivity training and a policy reminder would suffice. Diana turned to face the camera. Gregory, one of your fellow board members was publicly humiliated by an employee who felt empowered to treat her as less than based solely on her race. That employee had done this before, multiple times, with zero consequences. Her supervisor enabled her. This is not poor judgment. This is institutional racism, and we are going to root it out completely. But the cost? The disruption. We're in the middle of merger negotiations. Then we'll negotiate from a position of moral strength instead of hidden liability, Diana shot back. Every one of these buried complaints is a potential lawsuit. Every passenger we've mistreated is a story waiting to go viral. We can address this now, on our terms, or we can wait for the federal investigation that's almost certainly coming. Federal investigation? Gregory's face paled. I contacted the DOT and the EEOC this morning, Diana said calmly. I invited them to conduct a full review of our practices. Because transparency is how we rebuild trust. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Several executives looked horrified. Diana raised her hand for silence. I'm the CEO of this company, and I'm a black woman who was discriminated against while flying on my own airline. If I don't have the moral authority to demand change, who does? She looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes in turn. I'm giving you all a choice. You can be part of the solution, or you can leave. I will accept resignations from anyone who doesn't want to do this work. But if you stay, you will commit fully. You will examine your own biases. You will hold yourselves and others accountable. You will help me build an airline where every passenger, every employee, truly belongs. Silence filled the conference room. Then her general counsel, an older white man named Richard Torres, spoke. I'm in. Whatever it takes. Her CFO, an Indian-American woman named Priya Mehta, nodded. Absolutely in. One by one, executives voiced their commitment. Gregory Stone remained silent on the video screen, his expression sour. Gregory? Diana prompted. I think you're making a mistake, he said stiffly. But I'm outvoted. Do what you must. I will, Diana promised. The meeting continued for 3 hours. Action plans were drafted. Timelines established. Budgets allocated. Dr. Washington was retained as a consultant. An independent oversight committee would be formed, with representatives from civil rights organizations and community groups. By 6 p.m., Diana had the framework for a complete transformation of her company. The sun was setting over Los Angeles when Diana finally left the conference room. Her head pounded from hours of intense discussion. Her throat was dry from talking. But she felt something she hadn't felt in months: hope. Real change was coming. Kenneth walked with her to her office. The media is going crazy. The passenger videos have been viewed over 15 million times. #Skyrise discrimination is trending worldwide. We're getting interview requests from every major outlet. Diana nodded. Set up a press conference for tomorrow morning. I'll address this head-on. What about damage control? The PR team wants to craft careful statements, avoid admitting liability. No, Diana cut him off. We tell the truth. We admit we failed. We explain what we're doing to fix it. People respect accountability more than they respect spin. Her assistant appeared with a stack of messages. MS. Mitchell, you have calls from CNN, NBC, The New York Times, The Washington Post, and about 40 other outlets. Also, your mother called. She saw the videos and wants to know if you're okay. Diana smiled. Call my mother back first. Tell her I'm fine and I'll call her tonight. Schedule the media interview starting tomorrow afternoon, after the press conference. Yes, ma'am. Diana sank into her office chair and closed her eyes for just a moment. When she opened them, Kenneth was still there. You should know, he said quietly, Jennifer Hartley is doing interviews. She's claiming she's the victim of a misunderstanding. Playing the sympathy card. Diana pulled up her computer and found the clip. Jennifer, eyes red from crying, sitting in her modest living room, talking to a local news reporter. I made a mistake in judgment, Jennifer was saying. But I never intended any discrimination. I've lost my job, my reputation, my livelihood. I'm being crucified over one bad decision. The reporter asked, but there were previous complaints against you. Misunderstandings. People are so sensitive these days. You can't do anything without someone claiming offense. Diana felt her jaw tighten. Jennifer still didn't understand. Still saw herself as the victim. Let her talk, Diana said. The more she speaks, the more she reveals who she really is. Truth has a way of coming out. Kenneth nodded. What about the Blackwoods? What about them? Robert Blackwood is a senior partner at Whitman & Associates, a major investment firm. Catherine runs a lifestyle blog with 500,000 followers. They're both being dragged online. His firm released a statement saying they're reviewing the matter. Diana felt no satisfaction in their suffering, but she felt no sympathy either. They had participated in her humiliation. They would face their own consequences. That's not our concern, she said. Our concern is fixing our company. Over the next 3 weeks, Diana worked 18-hour days. She appeared on morning shows, gave keynote addresses, wrote op-eds for major newspapers. She didn't shy away from the uncomfortable questions. She didn't minimize what had happened. I experienced discrimination on my own airline, she told one interviewer. And if it happened to me, with all my power and resources, imagine what it's like for passengers who don't have those advantages. Who can't fight back. Who suffer in silence because speaking up might mean missing their flight, losing their job, being labeled as difficult. The story became a national conversation about racism in customer service, corporate accountability, and the power of speaking up. Stock analysts initially predicted disaster. Skyrise stock dipped 12% in the first week. But then something unexpected happened. Customers responded to Diana's transparency. Bookings increased. Social media filled with posts from passengers sharing their own experiences and praising Skyrise's commitment to change. Within a month, the stock had recovered and climbed to new highs. Competitors were forced to examine their own practices. 3 other airlines launched similar initiatives. The Department of Transportation announced new guidelines for handling discrimination complaints. Jennifer Hartley continued doing interviews for about 2 weeks, but public opinion turned against her sharply when additional passengers came forward with their own stories. A video surfaced of her from 2 years earlier, making dismissive comments about certain types of passengers to another crew member. Her lawyer advised her to stop talking. She was last reported working at a department store cosmetics counter, making $13 an hour. Robert Blackwood was quietly asked to resign from his firm. The video of him calling Diana "sweetheart" and demanding she give up her seat had gone viral. His clients didn't want to be associated with that image. Catherine's lifestyle blog lost 3/4 of its sponsorships. She issued multiple apologies, but the damage was done. Maria Rodriguez, the flight attendant who had spoken up, became the public face of Skyrise transformation. She helped develop the new training curriculum, spoke at employee meetings, and was promoted to supervisor of passenger experience. Her starting salary in the new role was $78,000 a year, enough to support her mother's medical care and then some. Thomas Williams, the security officer who had handled the situation professionally, was recruited directly by Skyrise to head a new department focused on passenger relations and conflict resolution. His job was to ensure security responses were proportionate, fair, and never discriminatory. Patrick Reynolds, the supervisor who had buried complaints, was terminated. His wrongful termination lawsuit was dismissed when the company presented evidence of his systematic efforts to discourage discrimination reporting. He never worked in aviation again. Gregory Stone, the dissenting board member, resigned under pressure 6 months later. He was replaced by Dr. Simone Washington, who brought expertise in civil rights and corporate equity. The young girl from the flight, Jasmine Thompson, attended Skyrise summer aviation camp. Diana personally mentored her, connecting her with pilot training programs and scholarship opportunities. Jasmine sent handwritten thank you notes that Diana kept in a frame on her office wall. 6 months after the incident, discrimination complaints had dropped 78%. Customer satisfaction scores reached all-time highs. Employee morale improved dramatically as workers felt empowered to report problems without fear of retaliation. Diana was featured in Time magazine's issue on corporate leadership. The cover story was titled "The CEO Who Refused to Move." The Philadelphia airport, 1 year later. Diana stood at gate A12 again, the same gate where her journey had begun. This time, she wasn't traveling incognito. She wore a sharp charcoal suit, her hair styled professionally, her CEO presence fully visible. She was here for the anniversary event. Skyrise was launching a national campaign called "Everyone Belongs," featuring real stories from passengers and employees about respect, dignity, and equity in travel. The terminal had been transformed. Banners hung displaying faces of diverse travelers. Video screens showed testimonials. A stage had been set up for speeches. But before the official program began, Diana had requested something specific. She wanted to take the same flight, the same route, in the same seat. Flight 447 to Los Angeles was boarding now. Diana walked down the jetway, her heart beating faster than she expected. Memory was powerful. This walkway, this plane, this seat had been the site of humiliation and triumph both. She stepped onto the aircraft. The lead flight attendant waiting in the galley was Maria Rodriguez. She wore her new supervisor uniform with pride, and her smile was genuine and warm. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Mitchell," Maria said. Then she winked. "Seat 1A, correct?" "You know it," Diana replied. She settled into the same window seat. Pulled out her tablet. But this time, she wasn't hiding. She was simply flying. Passengers boarded, and Maria greeted each one with the same warmth and professionalism. A black family. A white couple. An Asian businessman. A Latina mother with children. Every passenger received the same welcome, the same respect, the same champagne offer. Diana watched with satisfaction. This was what she had fought for. Not special treatment, but equal treatment. Not preference, but fairness. Margaret Saunders, the elderly white woman from the original flight, boarded and made her way to seat 6A. She had specifically booked this flight to be part of the anniversary. Diana, she called out, using the first name Diana had invited her to use during their conversations over the past year. May I join you for a moment? Please, Diana gestured to the empty aisle seat. Margaret sat down with a contented sigh. I wanted you to know, I've been volunteering with the NAACP in my community. Teaching classes on allyship to other seniors. We've had over 200 participants. Diana's eyes misted. Margaret, that's wonderful. You inspired me. When I saw you refuse to back down, refuse to accept less than you deserved, something shifted in me. I realized I had spent 72 years being comfortable when I should have been courageous. It's never too late, Diana said softly. A commotion near the aircraft door drew their attention. A young woman in a pilot's uniform was entering the cockpit. She was black, probably in her mid-20s, and she carried herself with confident professionalism. Diana's breath caught. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain James Crawford's voice came over the intercom. I'd like to introduce our first officer for today's flight, Jasmine Thompson. This is her first commercial flight after completing training, and we couldn't be prouder. Diana stood up so fast she nearly hit her head on the overhead bin. She rushed to the cockpit door. Jasmine saw her and broke into a huge smile. Ms. Mitchell. I wanted to surprise you. Diana pulled her into a fierce hug. You did it. You actually did it. You told me I could, Jasmine said simply. I believed you. Tears streamed down Diana's face. This was why it all mattered. Not the awards or the magazine covers or the stock price. This young woman, flying a plane, defying statistics, opening doors. Your grandmother? Diana asked. In the cabin. Seat 9B. She wouldn't miss this for the world. Diana walked back to row 9. An older black woman sat there, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Mrs. Thompson. The woman looked up. Ms. Mitchell. Thank you. Thank you for believing in my grandbaby when her own teacher said she couldn't do it. She did this herself, Diana said. I just gave her a card. She did the work. You gave her more than a card. You gave her proof that she belonged. The plane filled completely. Every seat taken. Diana returned to 1A. As the aircraft door closed, she looked around the cabin. This was what America should look like. Every background, every story, every dream, sharing the same space and the same sky. Captain Crawford's voice came over the speakers. Flight attendants, prepare for departure. Ms. Mitchell, welcome back. Diana smiled. She was home. The plane pushed back from the gate. Taxied to the runway. Lifted into the air with the same physics that worked for everyone, regardless of who they were or what they looked like. Diana looked out the window as Philadelphia disappeared below. She thought about her grandmother, who had cleaned planes and dreamed her granddaughter might one day work in an office. Who could never have imagined that same granddaughter would run the entire airline? She thought about every person who had ever been told they didn't belong somewhere. Every passenger questioned about their ticket. Every employee told to ignore discrimination. Every child who dreamed of flying but was told the sky wasn't for people like them. She thought about Jennifer Hartley, whose fear and prejudice had cost her everything. Diana didn't celebrate her suffering, but she didn't regret the consequences either. Actions had to matter. Choices had to have weight. Her phone buzzed. An email from the International Airline Association, inviting her to keynote their annual conference. The topic, leading through crisis with integrity and courage. She accepted immediately. Another email, this one from a producer at Netflix. They wanted to make a documentary about the incident and the transformation it sparked. Diana made a note to discuss it with her communications team. If it could inspire more change, more courage, more people standing up, then maybe it was worth reliving those difficult moments. The plane leveled off at cruising altitude. Maria approached with a bottle of champagne. "Compliments of the flight crew," she said, pouring a glass. "We all wanted to say thank you for standing up for us. For passengers. For everyone." Diana raised her glass. "To everyone who refuses to move when they know they're right. To everyone who speaks up when silence would be easier. To everyone who believes we can do better." Maria clinked her glass against Diana's. "To belonging. To belonging," Diana echoed. She sipped the champagne and pulled out her laptop. She had work to do. Skyrise was expanding internationally, and she had insisted that every new route, every new partnership, every new market entry be evaluated not just on profit potential but on commitment to equity. The airline industry was watching. Competitors were changing policies. The Department of Transportation had adopted new regulations. Other CEOs were calling Diana for advice. One woman refusing to give up her seat had started a revolution. Diana worked for an hour, then closed her laptop and simply looked out the window. The country spread below like a patchwork quilt. Cities and farmland, mountains and deserts, rivers cutting silver paths through the landscape. All of it accessible to anyone with a ticket and a dream. The plane descended into Los Angeles. Diana felt the familiar change in air pressure, the subtle shift as the aircraft prepared to land. As they touched down, smooth and gentle, passengers applauded. They were clapping for Jasmine, for her first successful commercial flight. But Diana felt like they were clapping for something bigger. For progress. For possibility. For the world that could be when people insisted on fairness instead of accepting unfairness as normal. The aircraft taxied to Gate 42, the same gate where Diana had disembarked a year ago to face a crisis that would define her leadership. Today felt entirely different. Today felt like celebration. As passengers began gathering their belongings, Diana stood and addressed the cabin one final time. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being part of this anniversary flight. 1 year ago, something happened in this very cabin that changed my life and changed this airline. It started with discrimination, but it ended with transformation. And that transformation continues every single day." She paused, her voice thick with emotion. "I want you to know that every time you fly with us, you're supporting a company committed to treating every person with dignity and respect. Not because it's good for business, though it is. Not because it's good PR, though it is. But because it's right. Because everyone deserves to reach their destination without having to prove they belong there." The cabin erupted in applause. Passengers stood, clapping and cheering. Some were crying. Maria had tears streaming down her face. Diana continued, "And I want to especially acknowledge our first officer today, Jasmine Thompson, who is living proof that when we remove barriers, talent soars." More applause. Jasmine appeared in the cockpit doorway, waving shyly. "Fly safely, everyone. And remember, you belong wherever you have the courage to go." Diana exited the aircraft. The jetway was lined with Skyrise employees, all applauding. Kenneth was there, along with Dr. Washington, Priya, Richard, and dozens of others who had worked tirelessly on the transformation. "How does it feel?" Kenneth asked. "Like the beginning, not the end," Diana replied. "We've done good work, but the work continues." They walked into the terminal together. A crowd had gathered near the gate. News cameras. Reporters. But also regular passengers who wanted to be part of the moment. A young black boy, maybe 8 years old, broke through the crowd and ran up to Diana. His mother hurried after him, apologizing. "It's okay," Diana said, kneeling down to the boy's level. "What's your name?" "Marcus," he said, then caught himself. I know you said not to be scared, but I am a little bit." Diana smiled. "Scared of what?" "Of flying. It's my first time." "Mine too, once upon a time. Want to know a secret?" He nodded eagerly. "Being scared doesn't mean you can't do something brave. It means doing that thing anyway. You're already brave just by being here." Marcus's face lit up. "Really? Really? And you know what? That pilot who just flew this plane, First Officer Thompson. This was her first flight too. She was probably nervous. But she did it anyway. I'm going to be a pilot too," Marcus announced with sudden confidence. Diana pulled out her card and handed it to his mother. "Make sure he applies to our youth aviation program. We need more pilots like Marcus." The mother took the card with shaking hands. "Thank you. You don't know what this means." But Diana did know. She knew exactly what it meant to see someone who looked like you doing something you'd been told was impossible. She knew the power of representation, of possibility made visible. The press conference began at 8 p.m. Diana stood at a podium in the airport conference center, camera lights bright in her face. She spoke for 20 minutes without notes. She talked about her grandmother cleaning planes. About starting as a gate agent with a dream and a determination. About building Skyrise into a competitor through innovation and commitment to excellence. And then she talked about the moment that changed everything. "1 year ago, I was asked to give up my seat because someone decided I didn't look like I belonged in first class. That moment was painful. Humiliating. Infuriating. But it was also clarifying. It showed me that all our policies, all our training, all our stated values meant nothing if they weren't enforced consistently for everyone." She looked directly into the cameras. "Since then, we've transformed this airline. We've implemented mandatory anti-bias training. We've created independent oversight for discrimination complaints. We've diversified our leadership and changed our promotion criteria. We've made it clear that discrimination will not be tolerated, not from employees and not from passengers who expect preferential treatment based on race." A reporter raised her hand. "Ms. Mitchell, some critics say you overreacted to one employee's mistake. What do you say to them?" Diana's expression hardened. "I say they're part of the problem. Calling systematic discrimination one employee's mistake is how injustice persists. Jennifer Hartley had 7 previous complaints. Her supervisor buried them all. That's not one mistake. That's an enabled pattern of abuse." Another reporter: "What would you say to Jennifer Hartley if she were here?" Diana paused, considering. "I'd say I hope she's learned from this. I hope she examines her own biases and does the work to become better. But I won't apologize for holding her accountable. And I won't let her victimhood narrative obscure the real victims, the passengers she mistreated." The questions continued for an hour. Diana answered them all with honesty and directness. No corporate doublespeak. No evasions. When it ended, she felt exhausted but satisfied. Kenneth drove her home. They rode in comfortable silence for a while before he spoke. "You know what I'm most proud of?" "What?" "That you didn't let them make you smaller. You stood in your power, and you used it to lift others up." Diana looked out the window at the Los Angeles lights spreading in every direction. That's what power is for. If you're not using it to make things better, what's the point? At home, Diana kicked off her heels and poured herself a glass of wine. She sat on her balcony overlooking the city and let the evening breeze cool her face. Her phone rang. Her mother. "Baby girl, I am so proud of you." Diana smiled. "Thanks, Mama. Your grandmother would be proud too." You know that, right? I hope so. I know so. She used to tell me, our girl's going to change the world. And look at you. You really did. They talked for an hour, catching up on family news, laughing about old memories. When they hung up, Diana sat in the darkness and thought about legacy. What would she be remembered for? The stock price she'd increased? The routes she'd expanded? The merger deals she'd negotiated? No. She'd be remembered for refusing to move from seat 1A. For standing up when it would have been easier to sit down. For using her moment of pain as a catalyst for meaningful change. The next morning, Diana woke to her phone buzzing with notifications. The press conference had gone viral. Clips were playing on every major news network. Social media was flooded with supportive messages. But one email stood out. It was from a woman named Keisha Robinson, a passenger who had flown Skyrise 3 years ago. Dear Ms. Mitchell, it read. I was on a flight where a black family was treated terribly by a flight attendant. I wanted to speak up, but I was scared. I stayed silent, and I've regretted it ever since. Your courage has inspired me to never stay silent again. Last week, I witnessed discrimination at a restaurant. This time, I spoke up. The manager apologized and addressed the issue immediately. Thank you for showing me that one person can make a difference. Diana read the email 3 times, tears running down her face. This was the real victory. Not just changing her airline, but inspiring others to change their corners of the world. Creating a ripple effect of courage and accountability. She forwarded the email to her team with a simple note, this is why we do the work. The months that followed brought more changes. Skyrise opened a leadership development program specifically for employees from underrepresented backgrounds. They partnered with HBCUs to create pipeline programs. They published annual diversity reports with transparent metrics and accountability measures. Other industries took notice. Hotels started examining their practices. Restaurants trained staff on bias. Retailers created customer service standards centered on equity. Diana was invited to speak at conferences, universities, corporate retreats. She accepted as many as her schedule allowed, always sharing the same message, standing up for what's right might be costly in the moment, but silence costs far more in the long run. 2 years after the incident, Skyrise was recognized as the most diverse major airline in America. Not just in passenger demographics, but in leadership, pilot corps, flight attendants, ground crew, and corporate offices. Diana stood in her office, looking at the wall where she'd hung Jasmine's thank you note, Maria's first Employee of the Month award, and photos from the anniversary flight. Kenneth knocked and entered. Board meeting in 10 minutes. They want to discuss the international expansion proposal. Let's talk about Brazil, Diana said. But only if we can ensure the same equity standards we've established here. Already on it. I've been meeting with their labor unions and civil rights organizations. They walked to the boardroom together. Dr. Washington was already there, reviewing documents. The rest of the board filtered in. Gregory Stone's empty seat had been filled by a brilliant young Latina executive from the tech industry. Let's begin, Diana said, calling the meeting to order. First item, our commitment to ensuring that Skyrise's expansion doesn't just spread our routes, but spreads our values. 3 years after refusing to give up her seat, Diana sat on a panel at the National Civil Rights Museum in Memphis. The moderator asked her to reflect on that day. It wasn't heroic, Diana said honestly. I was angry and hurt and scared. But I was also tired. Tired of swallowing indignity. Tired of making myself smaller so others could feel bigger. Tired of accepting that's just how things are. She looked out at the audience, which included many young faces. Here's what I want you to understand, change doesn't happen because someone gives it to you. It happens because you refuse to accept the unacceptable. It happens when you stand firm even when your knees are shaking. It happens when you use whatever power you have, even if it's just the power to say, "No, I won't move." The audience gave her a standing ovation. After the panel, a young woman approached her. She was maybe 22, wearing a college sweatshirt. "Ms. Mitchell, I'm a business student. I want to be a CEO someday. But I'm black, and I'm a woman, and sometimes I wonder if there's room for me." Diana took her hands. "There's room. We're making room. And when you get there, you make more room for the people behind you. That's how it works." "Thank you," the young woman whispered. "What's your name?" "Destiny. Destiny Williams." Diana pulled out her card. "Email me, Destiny. Let's talk about internships at Skyrise." That night, flying back to Los Angeles in seat 1A, of course, Diana reflected on the journey. From her grandmother's hands scrubbing toilets to her own hands signing policies that protected dignity. From being invisible to being unavoidable. From surviving to thriving. She thought about all the people who had been part of the story. Jennifer Hartley, whose prejudice had exposed a system's failings. Maria, whose courage had cost her safety but earned her respect. Thomas, whose professionalism had prevented escalation. Margaret, whose allyship had blossomed from awareness to action. Jasmine, whose dreams had taken flight literally and figuratively. And she thought about the millions of passengers who flew every day, most of whom would never know how close Skyrise had come to being just another company that talked about values but didn't live them. The plane descended into Los Angeles. Diana looked out at the city lights, thinking about tomorrow's meetings, next week's challenges, next year's goals. But mostly, she thought about the boy named Marcus who wanted to be a pilot. About Destiny who wanted to be a CEO. About every child who had ever been told they didn't belong and had believed anyway. The wheels touched the runway. Smooth. Steady. Home. Diana gathered her things as the plane taxied to the gate. The flight attendant on this route was new, someone Diana didn't recognize. The woman approached her seat with champagne. "Welcome home, Ms. Mitchell. We're honored to have you on board." "Thank you," Diana said. "How long have you been with Skyrise?" 2 months. "I'm in the new diversity recruitment program." Diana smiled. "How are you finding it?" "Honestly? Best decision I ever made. I worked for another airline before this. The difference in culture is night and day. Here, I feel like I can bring my whole self to work." "That's exactly what we're aiming for," Diana said. The woman hesitated. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course. I'm a single mom. 2 kids. The old airline used to make it impossible to balance work and family. Here, my supervisor actually asked me about my needs and worked with me to create a schedule that works. That's never happened before." Diana felt pride swell in her chest. "What's your name?" "Angela. Angela Martinez." "Angela, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being part of our team." As Diana walked through the terminal, she passed families heading to destinations all over the world. Every color, every language, every story. All equal under the same sky. Her phone buzzed one more time. A text from Jasmine Thompson: "Just got assigned my first international route. Paris. Thank you for everything." Diana typed back: "You earned it. Fly high, Captain-to-be." She stepped out into the Los Angeles night, breathing in the cool air. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would always be more work to do, more barriers to break, more people who needed someone to believe in them. But tonight, she allowed herself to feel satisfaction. Not completion, because the work was never complete. But progress. Real, measurable, meaningful progress. She had refused to move from seat 1A, and in doing so, she had moved an entire industry forward. That was legacy. That was power. That was purpose. Diana Mitchell, granddaughter of a woman who cleaned airplanes, CEO of an airline, advocate for dignity and justice, headed home. The sky was open to everyone now. And that made all the difference. So what do you think? Would you have had the courage to stand your ground like Diana did? Drop a comment and let me know your thoughts on this incredible story. If you believe everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect regardless of their race, smash that like button. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss stories of courage, justice, and transformation. And share this video with someone who needs to hear that they belong exactly where they are. Thank you for watching, and may you always find the strength to stand firm when standing firm is what's right. Until next time, remember. Your seat is your seat, and nobody has the right to make you feel like you don't deserve to be there. Take care, and keep fighting for justice. Diana Mitchell's story teaches us profound truths about dignity, courage, and systemic change. First, standing up against injustice requires immense bravery, especially when you're alone and vulnerable. Diana could have quietly accepted the humiliation to avoid confrontation, but she chose dignity over comfort. Second, discrimination thrives in silence. Jennifer Hartley had mistreated passengers for years because complaints were buried and witnesses stayed quiet. Change only came when someone with power refused to accept the status quo. Third, true leadership means using privilege to lift others. Diana didn't just fight for herself, she transformed an entire company to protect future passengers and empower employees like Maria. Fourth, accountability without action is meaningless. Policies and training materials gather dust unless leaders enforce consequences and create real structural change. Fifth, allyship matters. Margaret's willingness to speak up, Thomas's professional integrity, and Maria's courage to testify all contributed to justice. Finally, representation changes lives. Young Jasmine seeing a black woman CEO gave her permission to dream bigger. Every person who breaks barriers makes the path easier for those following behind. Diana's refusal to move from seat 1A wasn't just about one seat on one flight. It was about refusing to accept that any human being is worth less than another. That's a lesson worth remembering every single day. What would you have done in Diana's position? Would you have stood your ground or avoided the confrontation? Drop a comment below and share your honest thoughts. If this story moved you, if you believe discrimination has no place in our world, show your support by hitting that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel because we bring you real stories of courage, justice, and transformation that mainstream media often overlooks. Share this video with your friends, your family, your co-workers, anyone who needs to hear that standing up for what's right always matters, even when it's terrifying. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of a community that believes in dignity for all people. May you find the courage to speak up when you witness injustice, the strength to stand firm when pressure mounts, and the wisdom to use whatever power you have to make the world more fair. Remember, every act of courage inspires someone else to be brave. Your voice matters. Your actions ripple outward. Keep fighting the good fight, and I'll see you in the next story. Stay strong, stay kind, and never forget that you belong exactly where you dare to stand.